Somewhere in July right now, and y'all are the godly people showing up for church while everybody else is vacationing. Thanks for being here. A couple of things. Next week, we'll continue in the Gospel of Luke, but I want you to know this. The month of August is going to be a little different, so if you've been coming for a while, we've literally, and I'll catch you back up to speed in a little bit, been walking through the Gospel of Luke now for 18 months or so. Just walking through verse by verse. We're in Luke 18 now. But for the month of August, we're going to take a little bit of a break. And here's the reason. For 4 weeks, we're going to talk about what it means to be a church. So I've been here a while now. It'll be 2 years in August, and it's starting to think about things and go, okay, I think it's time for us to get after our community. And so for the month of August, we're going to talk very specifically about how you can join us in that, what kind of people we're looking to join us, kind of staff we're trying to cover. So it's going to be back, I guess it was 18, 19 years ago when we planted our first church in North Georgia. It started in our living room, right? Little living room. It was Julie and I and 12 other people, and actually Briggs was with us. He was just in utero, so Briggs wasn't even born yet. And so we spent 6 months together getting ready to launch a church that ended up being in a bar. I still own churchinabar.com. I anticipate at some point we'll use it again, especially down here. I was in Key West last week. I'm like, oh, there's all these great places we could plant a church, a second campus, but not for this week. I'll tell you more about Key West in a bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to do what we did for 6 months, planning a church, and shrink it down to 4 weeks. We're just going to talk about all the things, and there's a very specific reason, because as we're kind of driving towards post-Labor Day is when you start to see people come back to church each year, particularly families, because they got to go back to school. Not very fun. In fact, since I taught last year, it's crazy how quickly summer just shrinks. Like, I feel so bad for teachers. I feel like they just got a break. I'm not going back next year, but they're all going back, and it's about to start again. And so 4 weeks, we're going to talk about that. Get ready for post-Labor Day, and you'll really notice that people start coming back to church when your shows come back on television, right? So there's like all the little, your CSI, Key West, or whatever the newest one coming out is, CSI, Buffalo. There's all these shows, Law and Order, Boston, all these different things, right? And so when those all start to come back, that's when you know. And so we're just going to get ready for those things. But here's how we're going to kind of launch off into August and prepare is actually the very first day of August. We have a very exciting event here, and we could really use your help, right? And so August 1st, that's a Saturday, we will be having a family festival here. Lots of fun stuff happening. From aquarium encounters will be here. Actually, Centennial Bank will have their hot dog cart, so they'll be feeding us hot dogs. In fact, if you know any middle school or high school student who needs service hours, there's lots of ways we can put them to work, but Centennial specifically has a role that they would love for someone to help with hot dog carting. I don't know what that means, but so if you know any middle school or high schooler, send them our way. We'll help them get involved. And we think you should too, whether that's for an hour or 30 minutes or for 6 hours. We'll have inflatables up, all sorts of stuff. And if you don't already have a Kirk at the Keys t-shirt, we'd love to give you one of those. And have any questions about any of this, have any questions about the family festival, or want a t-shirt, Deb down here, she'll just wave her hand real quick. This is Deb. Find her after the service. She'll help you with those things. If you're looking specifically to volunteer for the event, Michelle over here waving her hand, we got this. She would love to help you do that. And I mean this. First day of 2027, first day in heaven. Promise, don't think you're going to regret being a part of this. And I was all excited. I'm like, we have an inflatable slide, an inflatable bounce house. We're going to set them up next to the basketball court, kind of in the back part of the church property, and all those things. And it's like, wait, I was going to hang out there, but apparently I'm going to be in a dunk booth. And so, or have one of those Dunkin' booths where the water falls on you. So could use some extra help volunteering. So any interest at all, yeah, you can see either one of them. If you're online, you're like, wait, I can't actually see them in person. Here's what you're to do. Just either drop a message on Facebook or YouTube if that's where you are. We'll track you down. Or simplest way, just email me, Josh, that's 4 letters, Josh, at kirkofthekeys.org. If you send it to me, I will get it in front of the right person. So that's all the August 1st event. And by the way, guys, we only have one more Saturday before that. So that's 2 weeks from yesterday. I'm going to need you to be agile, because the week of, we're going to be doing some work around here, from cleaning up the property, all those kind of things. We'll give you more information as we put all that together. But if you have some extra time this summer, we definitely use your help getting this property ready. That's all the August events. So this week, we're in Luke chapter 18. And then next week, we'll finish up some time in Luke. Spend 4 weeks together in August, talking about what kind of church God wants us to be. And then we'll jump back into Luke in September. By the way, this Wednesday night, 5 p.m., is our regular scheduled elders meeting. We usually meet in the back Sunday school classroom. By the way, it's an open meeting. If you're ever interested in being a part of that, come hang out with us. Usually runs for 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how long of a devotion I do at the beginning. Yeah. So that's all the news there. So anyway, now we're going to jump into Luke chapter 18. I'll be in verses 9 through 17. But before we get there, I have a confession to make. And it's an embarrassing one. Oh, gosh. So my son, Briggs, turned 18 July 5th. And for the longest time, I've told him that when he turns 18, we would go to a comedy club together because you don't know this, but my dad, still alive, he's 80, and still, in the weirdest sense, a ventriloquist, okay? So I've seen him stand in front of people, and he's not even a good ventriloquist. It's okay. He'll watch this. It's okay. He moves his lips, but he just needs to have this dialogue with he has this buzzard named Beulah. It literally is this matted buzzard that Julie actually tried to give away at a white elephant exchange one time. My dad was thrilled by that. But he'll talk to him, but basically it's just he'll tell jokes with this buzzard. It is the most uncomfortable thing in the world. I used to think it was awesome when I was in elementary school and middle school. The last time I saw him do it was about 10 years ago. We were hosting a foster parent banquet for our county. We had a farm in northwest Georgia. My dad just happened to be there, and that's kind of his jam. He spoke at all these things. He's like, Josh, I'll just jump in and do a Beulah. That's what he calls it, do a Beulah. I'm like, sure, Dad, free entertainment. And so he starts telling jokes, and I remember wanting to go back into like the house and hide. It made me so uncomfortable because his jokes are such old dad jokes. And from that point forward, I got kind of thinking, I think I can do this. So I told Briggs that when he was old enough to be 18, I would finally do an open mic night so that he could go with me. And so on Tuesday night, we drove to Key West Comedy Club. So that was just this week. And I signed up. Briggs was there with me to film, and I did 5 minutes. It's actually 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Yes, I was under time. I timed it, the whole deal. And I did 4 minutes and 15 seconds of what I personally thought was comedy. The folks in the room didn't think it quite as much. I mean, I literally walked in. This is not a joke, guys. This is all very true. I am already planning my Thursday night special every week because I'm thinking I'm going to go there. I'm going to make good friends. I'm going to be seeing this open mic night for the rest of my life. And, on Thursday nights, I'm just going to be a comic that goes down to Key West and tells stories. And hopefully somehow it'll help with the church. I mean, I'm thinking all this stuff, right? I'm actually thinking maybe at some point it'll actually help pay for Briggs' college tuition, all those things, right? Like I am that convinced, and this is not a joke. Literally thought that I'd be the funniest person in the room, which is so arrogant. There were 17 of us. And there were at least 15 who were much funnier than I was. That was my own personal opinion. The opinion of the room was even worse because I told 4 minutes and 15 seconds, again, what I thought was comedy, and there wasn't a single laugh. None. Not a single laugh. Not a single laugh. And I told ChatGPT this. I'm like, ChatGPT, you told me I was funny. We've been working through this together. And ChatGPT says, don't worry. If it was quiet in the room, it just means they were engaged. And I'm like, what? So the worst part is as soon as I got up on stage, I don't know why, you're supposed to grab the mic, set the mic stand, and just get at it, right? I get up there, I'm all nervous. And so they had a stool, so I went and grabbed a stool, and I just kind of plopped down on it like it was story time with Josh at the library. And I remember getting going and going, I don't think this is going well. And really, it was 4 minutes and 15 seconds of, I just want to get off the stage. I don't know what I said, not sure what they heard, and I was number 16, and then the headliner, is what they called him, came up after me. So these professional comedians from Boston were right before me. They threw me in there. The guy before me had his own documentary, and then they introduced me as, this guy might one day have a Netflix documentary. I'm like, yeah, this guy, they know me, right? He has no idea who I am. And I come up and I do these things, and I remember getting off stage, and the MC was like, good try, kind of thing, handing the microphone, and I go sit back down, and I remember Briggs going, what are we going to do next? I'm like, as soon as this is over, we are leaving, right? And I don't want to talk to anybody, and I was all excited about making friends. I was like, as soon as we go, we're going out that door. And so then, when you go to a comedy club, it's a 2-drink or 2, item purchase. I don't drink, not for me. I learned that experientially, unfortunately. And so I got an adult Lunchable and a Diet Coke. That's what they call it, an adult Lunchable. It's like salami. It's like a charcuterie board miniature one, right? And so, but it was like, gosh, if I pay with a card, I'm going to have to wait for him to come back, but all I have is large bills. So I just left a large bill and just got out of there, right? So the guy got a great tip, but it wasn't because I was trying to be generous. It was because I want to get out of this room as soon as possible. I get out of the car. We dart to, Briggs is the one driving my car. Didn't have air conditioning, so Briggs was nice enough to drive me down there. So he's driving me back home. And so we get in the car, and I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't know what he's going to say. I think I humiliated my son. Like, he used to think I was funny. And all he said was, Dad, it was okay. And I was like, oh, gosh, buddy, that hurts. You're trying to, like, and he's trying to, like, soothe me a little bit. And he knew exactly what to do. I'm not even kidding this. We get, Roosevelt Boulevard or whatever it was and start heading back north. And he cuts on his Spotify 90s country playlist. He's like, he knows what Dad needs. And so we're jamming out to 90s country all the way home. And it's like, this is so nice. Having a good time. We forgot about the whole thing. And it was Tuesday night. And we get to the 7 Mile Bridge. And all of a sudden, as we're like coming to the 7 Mile Bridge, I'm like, this is really nice. Like, this last 45 minutes, I didn't have to think about that. Just got to hang out with my son. God, that's so gracious of you. And we're coming to the 7 Mile Bridge. And it occurred to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, it is Tuesday. Every Tuesday, for years, it's just part of my like obsessive compulsive behavior. I always finish my sermon notes and I always send them out like clockwork. It is like nobody else makes me have this deadline. It's just my own personal deadline. And I'm coming over the 7 Mile Bridge and I thought, I did not even think about my sermon today. I was so consumed with this 4 minutes and 15 seconds of comedy that I literally didn't think about anything else on Tuesday. I didn't email out notes and doing those things. I'd worked on this sermon the week before. I worked on it a little bit, but I always finish it. And so I actually could not think, like on the way home Tuesday, I was like, I cannot remember what the sermon is even about. Ironically, I get home, go through all this stuff, tell Julie a little bit, and then I pull up my phone to actually look at the outline for this week. And this is one of my notes for it. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. That was what we're going to talk about today. And everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. And it's like, oh my goodness, God, I could have just done these notes on Tuesday and stayed home, or you allow me to experience this. And so I'm going up again one more week. Because that was the commitment. I'll do another week this week. Briggs and I are going back up. I'm going to try it again to see how it feels. Because everybody says the first one's the worst one. I certainly hope that's true. But it was absolutely humiliating, and I exalted myself in my own head. I literally thought I was on my own Netflix special. And within 2 hours, I really realized that everybody in this room is more talented and more courageous than I have ever been in my life. And they were so kind. It was nice people. They weren't like hecklers or booing. It just was humiliating. So here we go. That's what we're going to learn today. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. Okay, so reminder, we're in the Gospel of Luke. I'm not going to give you a long review. Don't want to bore you too much. But Luke is a real person, doctor turned investigative journalist. Best we know, he's hired by this guy named Theophilus, who he calls most excellent, which tells us he's probably a Roman official, okay? So Roman official with affluence and influence hires Luke, who tells us in the beginning of Luke he spends years, if not a decade, meeting with eyewitnesses, listening to local rabbis, pastors, reading other gospels and other written reports. And he writes all so that he says this to Theophilus and us, I'd argue, that I write these things so you have certainty of the things you've been taught. So he takes years to try to compile what Jesus taught and why we should listen. So what we've been doing is we've been walking through that gospel now for 18 months. Jesus was a baby, the pageantry of the shepherds, wise men. Then we don't get much of his adolescent. It says Luke 2:52, he grew in wisdom and stature, favored God, favored men. So that's what we got. He started to grow up. And then we get some stories about, him hiding from his parents, or his parents losing him while he's in the synagogue, some interesting stuff there. And then it kind of skips ahead to about year 29, maybe 30 of his life. And he starts to recruit these followers. Where we've been now, as Jesus is a couple years in the ministry, all the religious people have decided it's time for him to die, because that's the only way they know to shut him up, right? That's actually their plan. So there's this conspiring happening in the background. Jesus has now gathered thousands of followers, and some of those are fully devoted. Others are still questioning. And so there's these two groups of people, these folks who are very religious, who are just curious about the things Jesus is teaching, are there to judge him, or come up with another reason to conspire to do something to arrest him, right? And then there is these really devoted folks who are just convinced that Jesus is actually the Messiah, right? And then in between, there's a whole other group of just really broken people who are going, I don't know if it's true or not, but I hope it is, right? Like these are sinners who are going, that were outcasts from society going, it seems like Jesus is welcoming us. And every time he'd welcome these sinners, these people who sin differently than the religious people, more and more religious people, particularly what Luke has been telling us about is the Pharisees, like a religious sect of Judaism, basically like the high-performing, checklist-following legalists in Judaism. They have lots of opinions about Jesus, and so Luke is telling us the things that they think. And so we find ourselves Luke chapter 18, and this is what it says. It's going to jump right in verse 9, and it says this. He, Jesus, told a parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. So lots going on here. Jesus has just taught a parable about being ready for whenever Jesus is going to come back, right? And then he gets this other parable where he's now talking. It tells us, Luke's like, let me tell you what this parable is for and about. Jesus is telling this parable to people who trusted in themselves, that they thought they were really righteous. They really believed their own fanfare, really believed they were better than others, and as a result of that belief, actually judged other people. Now, Rick Warren has this really interesting quote that he shares about this whole idea of comparison. Here's what he says. He says, every time you compare, you fall prey to either pride or envy. So he says, every time, you see that. I mean, those are pretty significant words, not sometimes. He said, every time you compare yourself to others, you're going to end up doing one of two things. He uses the word prey, which means you become the victim, and you become the victim of either pride or envy. When you find someone who's doing a better job than you, like 15 at least of those comedians, than you fill up with envy. When you realize you're doing a better job than someone else, you become filled with pride. So what Jesus is going to do is he's going to teach this parable about people who compare themselves to others. Now, a while back, I gave you a definition I think is really important. It was back in Luke 16 and 17, where Jesus was talking about humility. And here's what I believe. I mean it wholeheartedly. That there are really only two paths to finally come to the conclusion that Jesus can be our Savior, right? Two paths. Either humility, or unfortunately the path that I keep choosing over and over again. I mean, that's not happening again Tuesday, right? Humiliation, right? Those seem to be the only two paths that either we knock ourselves down or we get knocked down. And so humility is a good definition. Humility is seeing God clearly and placing yourself accordingly. I used to define humility as this. Humility is self-awareness. It's being so aware of how different and distinct God is from us, right? But the problem with that so humility is your awareness of your own brokenness. You know, they have lots of opinions on it. Some people like C.S. Lewis will go, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Often, Tim Keller says humility is such a tricky thing to talk about because the minute you talk about it, it walks out of the room, right? All these different things. And so I used to go, humility is just awareness of our own brokenness. But the problem with that definition is, who is the most humble person to ever live? Jesus. By the way, he never apologized. So this false humility is not part of it. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. That doesn't make you more humble, right? So it's not about, but Jesus, if he's the most humble person to ever live, he who, knew no sin became sin. He who was sitting at the right hand of the Father came here and was born a peasant, right? So, but he was not broken. So it's not awareness of our own brokenness. It's awareness of God and his perfection. So humility is this, seeing God clearly. God, I know who you are, and therefore I know who I am, right? This is why Jesus even says on earth, not my will be done, but your will be done, right, Father? Right? So humility is seeing God clearly and placing yourself accordingly. Got a little bit more that we're going to learn about humility today in light of this passage. And it's this. Humility is seeing yourself in light of God instead of comparison to others. And this is interesting because a lot of time and energy, maybe not for you, but I'm guessing you too, is spent on comparison. Comparison. What you're wearing versus what someone else is wearing. If you drive the same car as someone else, what your car looks like versus what their car looks like. How often you clean yours, right? Whether or not it's been detailed on the inside. If you have a similar house to someone, you have to look and see who stewards their house better, who lays it out better, who decorates it better. Like if you have a yard, whose yard is better. One of the things that was very overwhelming about Pennsylvania, living there, was everything was manicured. It was just pretty. And we had this deep challenge that around us were the Amish, who stewarded everything well, and boy, were their properties just gorgeous, but in like this natural way, right? So you live in this neighborhood where we chose a neighborhood that had sidewalks for Halloween and all that kind of stuff, so really neat, but there were small yards, and your grass touched your neighbor's grass. And so that's very complicated because both sides of our neighbor's grass, they did something called fertilization of their yard, right? Which made theirs green and nice. That's kind of intimidating, right? And occasionally, I think our neighbor would think they're doing me a favor because they're like, oh, I'll just go ahead and cut all the way over to their driveway, because it ran into their yard. But then the whole other side would be like 1.5 feet tall, right? And so, they would write letters to the HOA to complain about it. And I happened to be the president of the HOA, right? So many complicated parts of all those things. So just, this comparison where we're always trying to meet someone else's expectations, prove that we're healthy. And so Jesus is going, here's what happens. Let me tell you this parable. No reminder, a parable is not a true story. It's a story that helps us better understand something about ourselves. The way I explain it almost always is Jesus is very kind to us. He knows that you're really bad at receiving constructive criticism. We all are, right? Julie can tell me something very specific about myself. Very rarely. She's actually very gracious in this. But she can tell me something that's very accurate, and my response will still be to argue the point. Even though what she's saying is actually true, the minute she tells me that, my first response is just this defensiveness. So Jesus does something really neat. He tells a story and goes, you see your role in it. You identify yourself in it. He's not yelling. He's not screaming. So he says, hey, here's what I want you to identify. He tells this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. These are people who thought they could earn their own salvation and earn their own value, right? And as a result of that, treated others with contempt. The word contempt in the Greek, just like it means now, it means to kind of prejudge, to make a judgment on someone based on their behavior or based on their life, right? So that's when a judge holds someone in contempt. It is a judgment that's been cast on them with consequences from that judgment, right? So treated others with contempt. You notice? There's a colon there. Just 2 periods, not an actual body part, just 2 periods, meaning that what's about to happen is what Jesus is telling us Luke's telling us is going to happen. Now he's going to tell the story. Here's the story. Verse 10, it says this. Two men went up to the temple to pray, okay? So they're going up to the Jewish synagogue temple where all the religious people are, and they're both going to pray. Now, here's the 2 men. There is a Pharisee, and there is a tax collector. Got it? So this is very interesting because Jesus is telling this to religious people. Religious people would have already chosen sides here. Pharisee in their mind, good guy. Tax collector, really, really bad guy. I explained this to you before. But a Pharisee was basically a churchgoer who followed the rules, or it's actually this thing called a yoke, this expectation of how people behaved. So every Pharisee had kind of a scribe or a priest that they followed, and they depending on, it's like a denomination, depending on which one they followed, they had to wear denim skirts, or they had to churn butter, or they had to, wear one pieces kind of thing. You know that works. Can't dance in church, or you can dance in church. Can't raise your hand in church, you can't raise your hand in church, right? All those things, same kind of deal in Judaism. These Pharisees had very specific rules. And the neat thing about Pharisees, and the unfortunate thing about them, is they are really, really good at performance. Meaning, even if they were dirty and broken, boy, did they have this ability to make themselves look really, really good and make other people look really, really bad. And so this is a deep contrast. Pharisee, very religious person, and the other a tax collector. No tax collector in the first century. When Jesus were to mention this word, they would have immediately groaned. They hated this person. Like deep hatred. Tax collector was a Jewish guy who lived in a Jewish community, but worked for the Roman government. And his job was to collect taxes for Caesar. And the way he did it was he was able to charge whatever he wanted. The way I like to explain it is, let's say, for every dollar you make, the Roman government wanted 20 cents, right? So tax collector's job is to make sure they collect the 20 cents. But he could collect whatever he wanted. So a tax collector could collect 50 cents if he wanted, and then only thing he had to do was give the Roman government 20 cents of that dollar. But if he collected 50 cents, guess how much he personally got to keep? You're good at math. 30 cents of that. So imagine this. One person makes $1. They have to give the tax collector half of that. The tax collector then sends 40% of what he collects, the 20 cents, to the Roman government. And now he is actually making 30 cents a dollar off of you, right? And if you didn't give it to him, he could make that choice, whatever choice he wanted. He would actually use the power of the Roman government to punish you. And the punishments were horrible, right? A lot of times it was in prison until you could pay it off. You know how hard it is to pay off debt once you get into prison? You can't, actually. So guess what happens next? They go, you're going to prison. But not only are you going to prison, you can't pay me while you're in prison, so your son will now become my slave until he pays off the debt. See that? So tax collector either takes the money or takes your freedom and your child's freedom away. I mean, they were heated. Seriously, I hate to even use this word. But someone who did horrific things to kids. Well, Jesus is going to call that out in this passage. Were looked at as better than tax collectors. There was a terrorist, doesn't matter, school shooter, don't get whatever it is. Tax collector was considered the worst of the worst. So when Jesus tells this story, it is very clear. Pharisee, good boy. The tax collector, bad boy. Got it? That's just where it begins. And here's what we're going to see, really, really important. We're going to see these three kind of movements or progressions that happen. Here's the first one. We're going to see that comparison actually creates pride. Got it? Comparison creates pride. Got it? So, two people, tax collector, Pharisee. Which one do you think is going to be prideful? Very, very simple. It's going to be the Pharisee. And here's what it says. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus. That's such an interesting way to say that. Prayed thus. Prayed thus. God, I love this, out loud. Oh my gosh, I wish I could see this. It seems like almost like a Zach Galifianakis clip from, Between Two Ferns. God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, this guy, adulterers, looking at you, Timmy, whatever it is, or even like, look at this tax collector. I mean, how uncomfortable is this? So Jesus tells this parable, again, not your story. Pharisee's praying, and boy, is he praying out loud. And what's he doing? Is he comparing himself to all the bad guys? So, goes through them. Extortioners, those who take advantage of you, right? Unjust, those who sin. Adulterers, those who sin with other people's wives, right? Or even like this tax collector. This man calls out the guy next to him, right? In the middle of a temple, right? And now watch what he says in verse 12. I fast twice a week. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. Okay? So, I don't know if you see it. Got it? 3. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. You see the focus is here? You're pretty smart. I. But really what's the focus? The focus is on him celebrating himself, right? And you already have this posture when you see this. We all do. Like, there's always funny videos of, like, you see them, like, come up on screen where, like, some guy's doing backflips in the ring, about to get into a UFC fighting back, and he, fight. And one guy's just, like, calm and doing nothing. Another guy's, like, walking and doing all sorts of stupid stuff, like, boop, and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, the whistle blows, and the guy who's doing nothing, just kind of there calm. One swing, just a quick cross. And I say that like I have no idea what that means, right? So I'm not sure. I don't even know why I said a cross. Like he punches him right in the face, and the arrogant guy who's doing the backflips, right, just falls down flat. And all of us feel so good about it, right? The way I like to, when I describe all the time, is the guy who's zipping in and out of traffic, like it doesn't matter, right? In and out, in and out. You get a couple miles down the road, and that person has blue lights behind them. Man, it just feels good. It just feels good. You're like, yeah, there's something about this. So Jesus is telling the story, and the Pharisees are like, wait, that's our guy. But man, that really is obnoxious. He's really telling you that he fasts twice a week. Guys, I fast 7 days a week. 7 days a week. Usually from about 3 a.m. to about 10 a.m. I do not eat. Every day. Like, I am godly 7 days a week. Take that, Pharisee, right? This guy fasts only twice a week, and I give tithes. That means 10% of all that I get. I mean, this guy is telling you his resume obnoxiously, and you know it. You've been around these kind of folks, that they're the hero of every single one of their stories. It just feels really, really uncomfortable. So that's one category. Jesus is telling you all about him, right? I assume you should already have some disdain or distaste for him, but I don't know. I don't know what first century it looks like. There may be the Pharisees like, wow, this is one of our really godly ones, right? I don't know. And it says this, verse 13. But the tax collector, standing far off, from verse 13, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven. But he beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. So we saw the first progress, right? Here's what we got. We got comparison creates pride, right? This tax collector, God, look at me, I'm so good. This guy's so bad. First thing, create this pride, this false sense of self. That you're going to see next, really, really interesting, is that humility creates honesty. This guy, he just goes, standing far off, could not even lift up his eyes to heaven, couldn't even look up, but beat his breast like he is feeling deep remorse, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. So here's what you'll see, very, very important, and why I think Jesus is teaching this is there's two lanes, right? There's the, in terms of, biblical worldviews or religious worldviews or any kind of, worldview that includes some kind of performance that you do to make God happy with you, right? Religion is man's attempt, I'd argue, to either get to God. God, look at all these things I ate. Look at all these things I did. Look how often I went to church, right? It's either man's attempt to either get to God or become their own God, right? If you're an atheist, you don't work to, make God happy with you. You're your own God, not like a mean way. It's just, if there is no God, the only thing you can actually focus on is your own kingdom. And so you're just working really hard to be a good king of your own kingdom, right? No judgment. So religion is either man's attempt to either get to God or become God. Or Christianity, which is, frankly, not because my dad was a pastor, not because I'm a professional Christian now. This is the reason, right? This is the reason I'm a Christian, because Christianity is the only worldview, the only one, actually, where God does not put all the pressure and expectation on the people to perform. He actually absorbs all the pressure and performance in himself, right? So religion is man's attempt to either get to God or become his own God. Christianity, unlike Judaism, unlike Islam, unlike any other worldview, Christianity is God's perfect attempt, by the way, not just an attempt, perfect attempt, to actually reconcile with man. Jesus does all the work. And so what you're going to see here is religion says, look what I've done, right? You got the Pharisee. Look what I've done. Man, I fast, I tithe, I do all these things. Look what I've done. No, the gospel, what Jesus is trying to help them understand, the good news that he is presenting to them is actually, look what Christ, or Jesus is like, look what I have done, not your performance. You can either be graded on your performance, which will be a bad grade, or you can be graded on my performance, Jesus is saying, and that will be a good grade, right? And so this guy, the tax collector, just come to this posture of, I don't want to speak out loud, right? Like, oh, God, would you just please be merciful to me, a sinner, right? So I like the posture of, you hear people going, well, I'd go to church, but if I go to church, lightning would strike and the roof would fall down. It's like, I appreciate that posture. I'm really sad that that's how you view God, but I appreciate the posture, right? Like, boy, there's something about humility, of just your own awareness of how perfect and holy God is and how imperfect we are. That's probably healthy, but to get this posture that you think God wants to punish you for that, that's a real bummer, and I think the church has done a really poor job of making you think that's what God's like, right? So this guy comes in with all the trepidation. He just kind of comes in and goes, God, would you be merciful to me, a sinner? Just calling it out, sinner. Like someone who chooses their own plan over God's plan. That's all that means, right? God, you have a plan. I like my plan better than yours. I'm going to go my own way. I'm going to do my own thing, and that's sin, right? And so what we're going to see here is we're going to see this humility he has, and it's actually going to create some honesty. He's like, God knows who I am already, so I'm not going to try to pretend to be something I'm not. God, would you just be merciful to me? So again, parable, Jesus is telling the story, and this is what happens next in verse 14. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. Okay, who's the other? That's the Pharisee. Tax collector gets justified. For everyone, thanks God, who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Don't want to bore you with the Greek, but this word justified is really, really interesting. It's actually the word dikaioo. That's how you say it. So if you see that in my notes anywhere, you're like, oh, that's a really weird statement. No, I just had to, I don't know how to pronounce it, dikaioo. And it means this. It means to be declared righteous or acquitted or announced not guilty. So this is, for this guy, the tax collector, this is a beautiful story because he shows up like he's on trial and he's on the stand and he's just pleading for the judge and the jury to be merciful, right? Like, hey, I know what my sentence should be. It's probably death. Could you just give me life without parole, right? I mean, that's kind of the expectation of this tax collector. Not high, just going, I recognize I deserve a sentence. But what this word justified means is not guilty, fully acquitted. So this is I've never been in this experience, but I can imagine. I've had friends who have been wrongly accused of things and had to go all the way through trial. Even after a trial, there was declared a mistrial and have to do the whole thing again about false accusations. Just devastating. But to get to that point where you don't want to just go, plead no contest. That means, I guess you were guilty. You just got away with it. Boy, those words at trial are so significant, right? Not guilty of all charges. Not guilty. So what Jesus is saying is, hey, there is one person who will leave here guilty, sentenced to death, actually. Disconnected from God for all eternity, right? And there will be one person who will leave here fully justified, fully acquitted. And here's the moral of the story. Hey, those who try to exalt themselves, they will be humbled, right? Happened to me Tuesday. Boy, I literally was planning my own YouTube special. Cannot believe, it's nuts to me. It's nuts to me. Like, how did I get that far down the road? It's ChatGPT's fault. It gave me lots and lots of confidence about stories, about church, because that's what people at Key West Comedy Club wanted to hear, my church stories, for sure. And so uncomfortable. I don't know. Like, I literally somehow walked in there, like, super confident and, like, crawled out of that place hoping no one saw me. That was the experience, right? And so everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. So I tell you, two paths, humility or humiliation. And as your pastor, boy, do I want you to choose door number one. Like, hey, can we just go ahead and recognize that we're not perfect and we're not holy, right? So can we have some humility? From that humility, can we just be honest, right? That's what we're going to see. And then we're going to see the final progression. Grace creates justification. Grace creates justification, meaning acquitted. That word grace means that you are giving something good, some kind of reward that you do not deserve, right? So this guy deserves a punishment. Instead, he gets free and total acquittal, right? And then he says this. Now, they were bringing even infants to him that he might touch them. And the disciples saw it. They rebuked them. So weird. Wait. This seems like what is Luke doing here? I thought we were talking about arrogance and pride and lack of humility, all those things. And all of a sudden, it seems like a major left turn. So I want you to think real quick, and I'll help you with it in just a second. So just, why in the world do you think he says this next? Right? So if Luke is writing this, what we know is that he was inspired by every single one of these words by the Holy Spirit himself. So God himself is leading Luke down this path, knowing that 1,000 years later we would sit and read this word for us, right? And so God knew every single word, every single comma, every single statement where they'd fall. Now we get verses, right? Those come much later, hundreds and hundreds of years later. We get chapters, even later and later and later, just so we can get to things quicker. But this is just one long, stream of consciousness story, like the taming of Granny Witherall. That was just impressive. That I was in an honors class in my sophomore year in high school, and we had to read about the taming of Granny Witherall, which is this lady who got jilted left at the altar, and she just is telling you all about it. So I did that really to impress you all, and instead I just kept you longer than I should have, and now, again, here comes more humility my way. And so, but anyway, so stream of consciousness, Luke is just writing, right? He's just writing, and so why in the world would this be where he goes next? He was telling people not to be prideful and to be humble, right? To not exalt ourselves. And then the very next step is, be good to infants. Seems a little bit strange, right? So a couple things are going on. So Jesus is telling the story. This is not a parable. This is actually what happens next. So of course Luke's got to consider this, but God's orchestrating this whole thing. So Jesus has just told this story, and there are people there going, kiss my baby, right? And the disciples are like, should I just hear this? Get in the back of the line, right? You don't get in the front of the line. You get in the back of the line. Humble yourself and your kid. Tell them to, blow their nose or something, right? All them germs. So they literally are, playing bodyguard for Jesus going, he doesn't want to touch your dirty, little, gross children. That's what he's saying, right? And that's actually kind of the viewpoint. I'm not making this up, in fact. And 1 AD, so Jesus was probably alive, probably a baby, was an infant when this story was written. There is this uncovering of an actual, real, legitimate document out of Greece, okay? Looks like this. I would read it for you, but I can't. so I won't, but luckily I found a translation of it. And this is a letter, 1 AD. I promise it'll make sense. From this guy named Hilarion, which is a really good name, Hilarion. And he's writing to his wife, Alice, A-L-I-S, Alice. He's in Alexandria. I believe that's somewhere over there, maybe in Egypt. So writing it in Greek. And apparently he's looking for a job, trying to make money. We don't know the story. Don't know. He could even be a soldier. We're not sure. But he is in a place with other men and other people trying to get work and make money. His wife is at least 100 miles away, so he's having to write a letter to her, and she is pregnant. Okay, she's pregnant. I just want to read to you what this document, real document, actually says. Okay, Hilarion to his dearest Alice, heartiest greetings, and to my dear Baroas and Apollinarion, know that we are still even now in Alexandria. So he's writing a letter. Do not worry. If when all the others return, I remain in Alexandria. So he's sending this letter and going, hey, there's a lot of us here. I'm probably going to stay. Don't worry. I'm okay. I beg, this is again Hilarion to Alice, and beseech of you to take care of the little child, and as soon as we receive wages, I will send them to you, right? So this would be similar to, someone crossing the southern border, making money, sending back home to the people in Mexico. This is that kind of story. People trying to find money, take care of the family, right? If, good luck to you, this is literally, so like he's writing with some parenthetical phrases. If, good luck to you, you bear a child, well, she is pregnant, that's kind of the plan, right? If it is a male, let it live. If it's a female, expose it. By the way, exposed, that's actually what happened in the first century. Much money, hard to take care of people, and male offspring could earn a wage, produce things, and didn't have to depend on anyone else. So a male offspring was very helpful for a household. A female one wasn't, right? They had to get older, then there'd be some dowry, so there's at least, 14 years of just feeding them with no return. Their view, not mine, right? And so, what was customary, first one is boy, save it, girl, kill it. Ironically, this is in about the year 1 AD. I don't know if you remember. This is about the same time Herod is like, all firstborn males, they need to die. So, he's telling her that, going, maybe that edict's already gone out. I don't know, but it's like, hey, we're still going to keep the boy, but the girl we're going to expose. That word expose literally means to be placed out in public. So it'd be like on a hill, no fire stations, but at a fire station. This wasn't, you just, throw your kid in the trash, you just put him out somewhere else, and you hope that someone possibly gets him. The majority of these girls, and I don't mean to be graphic, they died, mostly because of elements and animals. See how egregious this is? It is disgusting. So there's no humor in it. It's just, that's first century. So when Jesus says, let the children come to me, this isn't just, make sure they have a good Sunday school with goldfish. This is, they deserve to live. Because they were considered less than human. In fact, one of the worst parts of living in that time is less than half of children, maybe a third, possibly. And I don't know the numbers specifically. I'm a pastor. I'm always making up statistics. That's why I'm so happy to speak to the thousands of you right now in the room. And so, but I don't know, maybe a third of kids, only a third made it to adulthood. So even parents were a little bit cautious in those things. And I remember because, it was such a weird thing because when we adopted Sophie, we got to bring her home from the hospital. But there's literally, like with other things, a rite of rescission, right? Like birth mom could change her mind at any point. And birth mom had gone through some heroic but very complicated deal with having Sophie, and we were under the impression, probably likely, that she would never be able to have kids again. So you're like, what's going to happen here? And Julie and I kind of went into it going, look, we're going to guard our hearts. I got a dad who was a full-time social worker and a part-time pastor my whole life. So he is always trying to protect me from the pain of foster care and adoption, right? Just heartbreak after heartbreak. So we went into this going, okay, our options are one of two things. Either we're going to love Sophie's birth mom, be a part of her life, and help her, be the best mom she can be. Or if God would so choose, Sophie will be our child. But it is weird when you bring that child home to your house. You're like, is that our kid? Right? Like we'd already brought home 2 others. Nobody was even considering getting them. Like we're stuck with them. And so, but it was weird. It's like, do we guard our hearts? Do we not? Do we lean all the way in? Kind of became a complicated thing. By the way, it's quite hard to guard your heart at all when this little infant who's dependent on you is dependent on you, right? Greatest gift in the world, right? In that sense. But I remember kind of that feeling of, do we just put our toes in? Do we got to be cautious here? So it wasn't that uncommon for parents to stay a little bit disassociated from their kids because of the pain that just comes with that. I mean, you know this. Like, some of you have had incredible animals that you've had a long time, and then they die, and you go, I don't know that I can do that again. Right? And you just know the pain of those things. I mean, it's just hard. And so it was very common practice. And so what Jesus isn't saying, I let them come to me even though their noses are snotty. He's saying, they matter. They matter, right? By the way, well, I'm telling you, only 2 goals for August and September. It is, let's create a church environment that unchurched people want to attend and come back to. So how can we be a friendly church that helps communicate the gospel and makes everybody feel welcome and loved, right? And how do we make sure kids are cared for and loved and supported? So the thing you can keep joining me in prayer, we learned about the persistent widow last week, is would you keep praying with me that God would lead us to the right family director? We are convinced it is the next right step. We will hire as a part-time position, but we'll figure out whatever we need to do for the right person. We just know that's the next thing because we believe this. Like, kids and families matter. As the world goes, particularly as it treats families, is how the mess starts to happen. You see it all over our world. And so, boy, do we want to get that right. So anyway, so in this moment, Jesus is just saying, hey, for such belongs to the kingdom. And then he says this, last verse. Truly, I mean, like, this is like emphasize, very important. I want you to know, truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. So this is interesting. Jesus tells a parable. He gets interrupted with a kid. By the way, Jesus' greatest ministry almost always happens in the Bible in interruptions. I know we don't like them. I don't like them. But Jesus leaned into them. And so he gets a second story, a second even more important point as a result of this. So these kids come. Disciples step in. He rebukes them and goes, no, let them come. And then he says this, truly I say to you, whoever does not, I want you to see this word, receive the kingdom of God. This is what I believe is happening. This is why I'm convinced. I mean, I'm sure God orchestrated the whole thing, but this makes perfect sense to me why Luke would have this right here in the story. 1, because it's true. 2, because it's not a new point. It actually backs up the first point in the word receive. It doesn't say whoever earned the kingdom, even whoever finds the kingdom, whoever, digs the hole and discovers it, whoever discovers the kingdom. None of those. It just says, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. And that makes so much sense to me. Because I remember when Briggs was born. Like, I remember just staring, looking at his little fingertips. Still the strange thing, he's 18 now. Like, he's a big guy, 6'3". He's actually playing basketball right now in Fort Lauderdale and some tournament. But a big guy. And it's like, but when he came out, he was, 7 pounds or so. And so we were staring at his fingernails because they just looked just like mine, like the same shape. It's the strangest thing in the world. But that's about all he offered me was my fingernails. That's it. He cried. Like, he used the bathroom a lot. And he didn't sleep real well. I mean, he was a good kid, like, for the most part. But, everything about our life was disrupted the minute he showed up. Everything. Nothing ever got back to normal, ever. Here we are, still in it, right? Still, like, tracking his location at 1 o'clock in the morning, going, why is he at Dania Beach right now? What is he doing? Doesn't he need to be? So I'm like, can't go to sleep because my son's not back with us. I mean, he's probably with his teammates at the Airbnb yet. Like, it's disrupted everything. And it's like, very nice of him to tell me that my comedy was okay. Thanks a lot, son. But he did drive me there and get me in a better mood as we listened to Travis Tritt's. It's a great day to be alive. Some good stuff going on. But like when he was a baby, he was just kind of a nuisance and offered very little. He just really did. I know that sounds terrible. I was the guy, so so I didn't have, like, you were in my belly for 9 months, so it's just like, here you are. This is this clump of cells that's a human who just uses the bathroom a lot, and I know that I got to make sure I clean you appropriately and be, I'm not really good at attention to detail, but this is a place I think I got to be good at attention to detail because you don't want to leave the mess. And so when you think about it, it's like, didn't really earn his keep at all, actually. He just cost us a lot of money and time. And I didn't care at all. Didn't care at all. Loved every second of it. Actually, wish I could push a button and shrink him back to that age again. Like, it's crazy. It's like I didn't care at all. It's like, so it's just like he offers nothing. Like, he doesn't say, thank you, Dad, right? None of those things. He actually cried when I held him. So I'm holding him, and, like, I can remember very specifically, like, looking at him and just laying there in this onesie, and he had this big bump on his belly, and I'm like, I think that's gas, right? It's like, even that, like, it's just gas. And so if it's on your back, you kind of pat him on the back, and he burps, and you feel good about it. I'm like, the one's on the stomach. So did the same thing, just gave him a little bit of a pat on his stomach. And when I patted it, I got rid of the gas. But whatever I did with that gas actually made some kind of explosion happen in his insides, and his insides came out of him. I don't know, he was in a onesie and a diaper, but somehow what was in him missed his diaper and his onesie, and it just exploded all over me. The neat thing is I remember seeing it on my thigh, and it looked just like the Virgin Mary. And I'm like, oh, God, that's really, really neat. But, like, literally, like, not only did he not say thank you, he literally just pooped on me. Or we'd go get him, like, and he would have gotten poop in the middle of his pants. He can't ever miss church again because I'm just going to see this is what he gets. And so, but I'm here coming and getting him at nap time, and he's just standing there, and all the stuff that was in his pants is now on his fingertips and on the walls. And it's like that. None of that's make believe, and it's like that's what he offered us at 9 months old. All right, I care at all. Don't care at all. Like, loved every second of it. Want to bottle it and enjoy it forever. And what God is saying, that is what the kingdom is like. Whoever receives the kingdom, meaning babies don't earn it. They don't perform for it. They don't even know. They are so clueless, right? They just kind of enjoy it, right? I think about this all the time. I dated the same girl through 4 years of high school, and I ate 90% of my meals at her house as a teenager, a 200-pound teenager, right? You know how much food I ate that they paid for? You know how many times I said thank you? I don't recall ever saying thank you. And then you get old and you become an adult and you're paying for other people's food and you're like, this is really expensive, right? And it's like, you're just in oblivion. You're just living life and enjoying it and all those things. It's like, up until 5th grade, I didn't wear a t-shirt when I swam. But then all of a sudden, some kind of new connection happens. I'm like, oh gosh, people judge me by the extra weight on my body. So now I'm going to swim in this skin-tight shirt, which doesn't help. No one would tell me that. But I would do it to cover myself up, right? All of a sudden, you start to become aware of things and become more insecure about things. And Jesus is going, see, you're missing it. When you're a baby, you just sit there and go, oh God, I just want to be in your kingdom. So this is not like a switch. It's actually an explanation for how the tax collector can come to Jesus in this posture. He doesn't know any better. He just knows he's broken and didn't learn that he had to perform to make a God happy with him. He just wanted to come and go, God, would you be merciful on me? And so Jesus explains the whole thing. He goes, hey, there's 2 lanes, right? You can try to perform and earn your reception into the kingdom of God, but you never will be able to do it. Or you can just receive it. That's why grace is called a gift, because it's something you receive. So it's really, really neat, because you know this. The only duty when someone gives you a gift is you have to open it and probably use it, right? But if someone gives you a gift, it actually always makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, do you want me to open this now in front of you? Do you want me to open it later? You know, that whole like weird moment. And I hope they say later, because I don't have a very good like, wow, what a great gift face, right? Like, I just don't have one at all. My brother-in-law is amazing at it. You could give him, like, I don't know, some of those styrofoam peanuts. And he'll be like, best gift ever. And I'm like, oh, that's really clever. Styrofoam peanuts. Can't wait for those to get in our ocean. That's what I would do. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not very good at it. But you still got to open it. You got to receive it. And so when Jesus says this, he's going, look, this is what you got to understand. Here's why infants matter. 1, because they're made in my image. But 2, they don't double and triple gas and try to earn and try to perform. They're just welcomed. It's like, so if you can get that kind of humility, know God's place, Father, your place, child. That's the only route that works, right? And so he goes, whoever does not receive this, the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it. One thought about this. And so what does that mean? What's our posture? Does that mean we don't pretend we're messy? Because this tax collector certainly pretended he was messy because he was messy. So do we not? Do we just ignore all that? No. There's actually 2 things we have to do simultaneously. And Tim Keller says it so brilliantly, so bright. Miss the sermons. I still read them. I'm so sad about his death a couple years ago. But in the meaning of marriage, of all the places, really, he wrote this about the gospel. And he says this. He says, In the gospel, we are far more sinful and flawed than we ever dared believe. Kids are kind of hard to raise. They're difficult. It's costly and expensive, right? In the gospel, we are far more flawed, far more sinful than we ever dared believe. Yet, at the very same time, we are more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared hope. Two things simultaneously. We are more sinful and broken than we even pretend that we are, far, or even recognize. And yet, at the same time, we are more loved and accepted than you could ever imagine. You stay in both those lanes, right? If you have a footing in both those camps, you got a pretty good bridge, right? Because it's going, yep, God, I recognize this. I don't deserve it, couldn't earn it, and yet here you are giving it to me, which requires me to be in this place of gratitude and hope, right? So here's the way you got to look at it. Comparison says, how do I measure up, right? Not healthy. Humility says, God, what is true? Grace answers that and says this. You're more sinful than you imagined, but more loved than you ever dared hope for. So what do we do with that? Well, there's only one thing we can do with it. We have to get our understanding of who God is from God, understanding of who we are from God. And so we have to ask that question. God, what's true? What's true? What's true? And so that requires a big gulp of courage to have this posture to sit still and go, God, would you just tell me what's true? So instead of us just praying a prayer and getting out of here, we're going to listen to a song. And I mean that intentionally. We're going to listen because it's going to play on the screens. But it actually kind of even muted the worship leader's, David Crowder, who's singing it, and placed the lyrics of what he's saying on top of it. Because I don't want this to be about a performance. Because again, it misses the whole point. But just some words that maybe we can use that David Crowder gives us in the song. It goes, here's my heart, Lord. Would you speak what is true? And then as you kind of get in this, you're going to start to see some words that God is telling you about yourself and us. And maybe we leave here with a better understanding of who we are and who God is. And leave here just with a real freedom to go chase after what God's done for us. So I'm going to pray for us. The song's going to play and then we'll wrap up. Jesus, here's our hearts. Our hearts. Would you, in this moment, God, speak what is true? Would you just reveal to us how much we're loved, how much we're cared for, how good your plans are? Say it every week. You tell us to the Apostle Paul, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no heart can imagine, that's what you have in store for those who love you. So God, you help us love you better now. And would you speak to us as we sit here in our posture of just wanting to hear from you, God? Pray these things in your name. Amen.